Hello, friends. Welcome back to 1D10T Does Stuff. And I am the 1D10T in charge, Trevor Stewart 1308. And we will be reading from Inflamed, Deep Medicine in the Anatomy of Injustice by Rupa, Marya, and Patel today. But before we get into the deep and heavy stuff, today's pre-rolls brought to you by The Hidden Leaf, downtown Charlottesville, Virginia, 105 West Main Street, above the Bricks, Suite 200. Oh, on the downtown mall. Above the Bricks, Suite 200. A great place to go with some great buds to get some great buds. A bud, and the only thing better than their bud is their customer service. Also, they have the lowest prices in town, according to my own personally highly biased research. By which I mean I was incredibly high when I did my biased research. Don't forget to check the website for times and events. The website is thehiddenleafcville.com. That's thehiddenleafcville.com, where you can find events such as Frosty Fridays, where you can find our other two sponsors, Firehouse, where there's smoke, there's Firehouse, and Kush Gang, purveyor of fine edibles and drinkables. A disclaimer, today's episode, always pretty highly political, heavy social subjects, and full of opinions. And these opinions pretty much are going to belong to me, the channel, the parent company, and or the other expressor of the opinion, although there aren't usually a lot of opinions, a lot of other expressors of opinions on these Tuesday streams. Those opinions don't necessarily belong to any of our sponsors, including Hidden Leaf, Kush Gang, and Firehouse. Alright. Ad read and disclaimer done. Time to light up. Get into some heavy stuff. This book, Inflamed, before we go on too much further, let me explain the book a little bit, is, it's an attempt. It is, because it is good. It is well written. It is pretty well reasoned. It is drawing a parallel between our own body and the environment inside our body. Oh gosh, what's the word? The biome. Oh man, lost the word there for a second. The biome and the environment outside of our body, the exposome, and how when we affect the exposome, it affects the biome. And when we negatively affect the exposome, it very negatively affects the biome through inflammation. It's also drawing a very distinct connection and parallel between the two by comparing our internal functions to the external functions we see in the world around us, while pointing out that these things are linked. And it does this, it explains the negative feedback loop that we're in through through the concept of inflammation. Thusly, the title Inflamed. Now, it also draws a distinct link, causal link, between how we treat the exposome and colonialism. And how colonialism treats the exposome is very similar to how colonial treats the biome. And the bodies that encase the biome. And there is the politics part of this. This is a very... The way this book is written can be a bit challenging in the beginning to sort of... It challenges one to open one's perspective. And it's that shift in perspective that allows one to begin to see the more holistic nature of the interactions between our body and the world around us. And that interaction is what they're trying to get at in the concept of deep medicine. And I'd like to take a moment to awkwardly shift into one more thing before we get too much further and started. I'm going to take this moment while we're talking about shifts in perspective to talk about NPR, National Public Radio, and who we are running a charity stream for right now, and we have managed to raise no money for out of $10, but NPR is valuable for offering a shift in perspective. Invaluable, I would even say, for offering a shift in perspective so that one can see a much larger world and begin to understand the tides that move us all. Let me take care of something real quick. Yes, and understand the tides that move us all. By offering unbiased news. They also offer local emergency alert services that are unavailable almost anywhere else, that could save lives or cost lives if not continued. And the reason that this comes up and it is so important, for one, National Public Radio and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in a broader sense show what we can do to fight against colonial the colonial influences that push on our lives so heavily. By supporting free and fair journalism, by supporting journalistic integrity, you support the rights of the people. You support the ability of individuals and large groups of society to make informed decisions, to understand those tides that shape our lives and be able to take part in changing them. This is important because the federal government has cut funding to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Not like slashed its budget, but cut funding completely. Including not giving money that had been promised, leaving a lot of local stations to scramble to find the funds to continue operating. And this cut in funding, while it does not threaten the existence of my local station, Radio IQ, it does affect it. And my local station has gone back to doing 2 fundraisers a year. One in the spring and one in the fall. And now is the season for the fundraiser. 1-800-985-8900 is the phone number to call to donate to Radio IQ. I think that's correct. 1-800-985-8900. 985 or 895? I'm pretty sure it's 985. But yeah, it is important to support your local NPR stations. But since Twitch, I don't think has a thing where I can support just my local NPR station, we're supporting all of NPR, which is fine. That is good, because NPR needs the help too. A lot of, a large amount of NPR's funds go to supporting local stations that can't necessarily support themselves. So it's not like you're not supporting local stations when you support the larger corporation. You are still supporting local stations. Now, the other really important reason to support NPR, to donate to NPR, is because of what it can do for you. When you go out in public, do you see people walking around with a sense of self-assured confidence? A small swagger that says, I know I've got it. I know I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm a good person. Just that little bit of, and it's not ostentatious, and it's not smug. It's self-assurance. That sense of self-assurance can come from donating to NPR. It will give you the sense of moral superiority without the smugness, now new and improved, that allows you to walk around in public with a little extra confidence in your step. That's hard to deliver with a straight face. But no, do support your local NPR station. Support NPR in general. Thank you very much. And now we will get back into the depressing stuff. We are most of the way through the book at this point. We are well over halfway through the book. And we have delved through some pretty intense stuff so far. We are starting a new chapter, Chapter 8, The Nervous System, The Web of Life. And judging from the chapters before, I honestly have no clue what to expect. But let us continue forward. I will say some chapters I kind of had some idea of what was in store. But this one is not so much. Chapter 8, Nervous System, The Web of Life. Pando Pando. The Trembling Giant Aspen, Bolivian Massacre Site. Trembling giant, bulging under siege, Pando Pando. Waving I spread, banned from the streets. Perpendicular to leaf blade, Pando Pando. Havoc natural gas. Pedial flattened. Opposition pushing right. Autonomy, rush, lift, break, cover, tremble. On the fourth day of yellow, white, garish, yellow, Pando Pando. Hunger strike, assailants lobbed a green grenade, forced to knees, shirtless peasantry, tree, Pando Pando. Pando Pando, aspen man, spreads, uprising, flowering, flower spreading, root, sprout, Pando, ambush. Where morals has stayed, biomass, clone cross, giant uprising, deeply rooted in indigenous growth, prevent Bolivia from splintering apart, Pando Pando. Visiting Santa Cruz, 100 acres, dynamite blasts, 14 million pounds, public humiliation, Pando Pando. Rooted 80,000 years, 50 indigenous mayors rooted, 30 Andeans killed this week, paralyzed borders. Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Pando Pando, colonial colony, colonial massacre. Clonal colony, colonial massacre, singular genetic individual. Morals and Aymara Indian, Pando Pando. Organized opposition, university students, conservatives, forced terrified indigenous people to their knees, forced refugee people to apologize for coming to Sucre, forced chanted insults to their hero Evo. Then conservatives set fire to blue, black, white Aymara flag, seized hand-woven Aymara ponchos, Aymara people, Pando Pando. Pando Pando rhizome, basil shoot, 7 dead shooting, Genet, Ramet, peasant farmers, organism overtaking not supported by current evidence, fish lake quaking, Amazon, Pando, aspen, life in largest singular germination, Pando Pando, Pando 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 Pando, Pando Pando, Pando 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 Pando, Pando Pando. Allison Adele Hedge Koch. No individual or species is privileged in the world of nature. All eat and are eaten. All become sick and die in their turn. Humans are part of an interconnected continuum of life. Lisa Kemmerer. For animals as well as plants, There have never been individuals. This new paradigm for biology asks new questions and seeks new relationships among the different living entities on Earth. We are all lichens. Scott F. Gilbert, Jan Sapp, and Alfred Tauber. Interconnectedness of life. I guess the interconnectedness of life as seen through the interconnectedness of the nervous system. Pando is the name of a giant forest in Utah, and also the name of the region in Bolivia where on September 11th, 2008, paramilitary forces killed at least 11 supporters of the then Bolivian president Evo Morales. The victims had been on their way to a union organizing meeting when they were ambushed by paramilitary thugs supported by local government. Students from a nearby teachers' college joined the Aymara protesters in an act of solidarity. 3 were killed and mutilated. Anthropologist Brett Gustafson reports that survivors of the massacre were whipped with barbed wire, a method of assault on indigenous Bolivians carried over from the early years of colonialization. The indigenous poet Alison Adele Hedgecote published her startling poem Pando Pando 5 years before Leopoldo Fernandez, the regional governor, had joined others in Bolivia's wealthy landowning elite to stage a coup in 2019 against Morales. An indigenous Aymara leader and head of the movement towards socialism, MAS, party. The coup government was supported by the United States, which had long been involved in backing right-wing regimes in the region and pushing neoliberal economic policies that opened up land for the extraction of resources needed by the North. Bolivia is rich in lithium and needed to manufacture all the batteries that keep our home electronics, including smartphones and electric cars, running. Unsurprisingly, the coup plotters were more aligned with U.S. interests over the control of these resources than MAS, which had instituted a law on the rights of Pachamama, Mother Earth. Elon Muskberg, whom now we know is evil, if I had a way of inserting it now, I'd insert that clip of him doing the salute. But when this goes up on YouTube, I'm not going to be that motivated. Elon Muskberg tweeted in support of the undemocratic government, saying, "We will coup whoever we want. Deal with it." Yikes. Morales, responding to the coup, called the same colonial history as the murderers in Pando did. "My crime, my sin, is to be an Indian. But in death and in grief, there is the possibility of regeneration. From the killings came the coup, but the coup ended and Morales' party was back in power by 2020. Democratically restored in a landslide, In Hedgecoke's poem, the Bolivian region, stained with the blood of its indigenous people, transforms into Pando the forest. The catalyst for this shift is the language of ramets and rhizomes, the tendrils of life that emerge from the soil. Pando, named from the Latin I spread, is one of the largest and oldest living creatures on Earth. Hi. They come, say hi, and get love. They demand pets before they eat. And it's not like, hey, come check the food bowls. I need you to know that, like, no, it's, hi, pay attention to me and love on me. Now I'm ready to eat. And I like to believe that it's them saying thank you. And that's what I'm going to believe and keep on believing. Pando, named from the Latin for eye spread. One of the largest and oldest living creatures on Earth. It appears as a forest of quaking aspens, but each tree is just a stem. All 47,000 stems are part of a single organism. Possibly thousands of years old, the world's heaviest being, stretching over 43 hectares underground. Stretching over 43 hectares underground. Huh. It's aspen, but it's also okay. But aspens are also a single thing. Pando is a single being, but also many. This should sound very familiar by now. We contain multitudes. Yes. The border between self and other is as fluid and in motion as life itself. In Pando Pando, we see how a single name can be plural. We hear the shots of those who were killed in Bolivia reverberating through the thousands of trees of a swaying forest in Utah. The poem describes a process of becoming, the self embedded in the web of life and intersected by history. It is a vision of blood spilled so that others might become. It occurs to me that aspens aren't the only thing that do this. For instance, I know that locust trees do this. Yeah. They're each a stem of a and I mean runner grass does something like that too. Runner grasses. So it's just that Pando is the biggest one. Interesting. We've been. You know what? We're going to go ahead and highlight this bit about Pando just because it's. feel like there's a storm coming because my hand keeps aching. But it's taken its darn sweet time getting here. We begin our journey into the immune system with Donna Haraway's observation that biology is about recognition and misrecognition. Playing with a homonym, Pando Pando juxtaposes two moments of life and death, recognized and misrecognized, above ground and below. The interplay of the two meanings of Pando, we find that the poetry of a new radical understanding of health. Reflecting on the poem, Hedge Cook observed, "We are Pando and never the single quaking asp in appearance presentation one may misidentify as individual tree. Poetry behaves like the wonderfully gelatinous blob oscillating unicellular intelligence, like a bit of the heart of Sky Woman extending throughout us, our world." Subterranean solidarity. Life's oscillating intelligence is part of our deep history. In the creation story told by Western science about 2.4 billion years ago, there was a vast expansion of biodiversity called the Great Oxygenation Event. A proliferation of new life forms was made possible by the cumulative effects of cyanobacteria floating in the oceans. Through photosynthesis, these bacteria created oxygen, enabling the evolution of new kinds of organisms who could use this molecule as an energy source. Single cell organisms expanded in size until they hit a limitation of diffusion. Any bigger in the surface area to the volume ratio works against getting nutrients into and waste products out of a cell. When they could no longer grow, they started creating mutually beneficial systems of relationships with one another. Archaeon fused with a bacterium to form the first nucleated cell. A photosynthetic bacterium got incorporated into the nucleated cell to form the first plant cell. That bacterium now exists as chloroplasts in today's plant world. Single cellular organisms compartmentalized functions, joining together to make multicellular organisms in which each individual cellular unit works for the benefit of the whole system in an autonomous and converging ways. For plants, this evolution led to biological tools that eventually made it possible for them to cover most of the entire surface of the terrestrial planet. But before that could happen, the hard rock surface of Earth had to be broken down into minerals available for life that would not have been possible without fungi. There it is. Because if we are talking about something, some not biological, but some natural, nature-based analog to the nervous system, I would think it would be fungi. Most likely be fungi, especially because fungi are what create essentially some sort of communication network between almost all plants. Fungi in general are how plants interact with the world around them. It's how their roots get the exchange of water, and nutrients. It's how those nutrients get into the roots. There are fungi that do sort of the final stage of breaking down and passing on. And those fungi interact between plants. And that's one way that plants interact with each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they go for this, with this. Although fungi represent only 10% of life on Earth, no terrestrial life as we know it would exist without them. Fungi can be found in every ecosystem on the planet. On rocks, in rivers, in the hot desert of the Mojave, in the cold deserts of the Arctic, in forests, in tropical jungles, in thermal hot springs, even in the depths on the ocean floors, which may be one of the largest fungal habitats. Lichens, the first life form to emerge on the rocky surface of the Earth, are a composite organism made up of species from 2 or more kingdoms, often fungi and bacteria. While fungi usually get their energy from organic material around them, lichens, cyanobacteria, get their energy from the sun and share their resources with the fungi who bore into rock, liberating mineral nutrients and creating soil. Today, these ancient relationships endure as lichens cover 10% of the planet's surface, literally laying the groundwork for more life. In 1867, the Swiss botanist Simon Schwendener first suggested that lichens were made up of 2 different kingdoms within a single life form. The initial response by the scientific community was ridicule. Modern biology and the medicine that rests upon it has been part of an epic misrecognition of self and other. Hence the quote at the beginning of this chapter from a remarkable remarkable scholarly takedown of the biological idea of individualism by biologists Scott F. Gilbert and Jan Sapp, and physician and philosopher Alfred I. Tauber. The truth is that we are all systems of life that stretch across biological kingdoms and across space and time. Individual organisms are constituted in mutualism, an exchange in which the borders between self and other are fluid. That we have failed to appreciate the significance of this web of life reflects on individualist strain in the human sciences and the sciences born of modern liberalism. If your biological theory allows you to only look for individuals, then the research technology you'll develop as a result will be very good at investigating individuals. But if your theory is different, the world is cracked open. Again, speaking of perspectives, and I was watching an interesting video earlier today about not just perspective, but paradigm, and how that affects the world you perceive. And that is basically what they just said. Yeah. Sophisticated ecological system. Cheese and crackers. All right, let's try that again. Sophisticated ecological systems thinking in Europe and North America dates from the mid-20th century. For thousands of years, however, indigenous forms of knowledge have revealed and attended to the interconnected systems, the complex networks that makes life possible. We've drawn on indigenous systems thinking and on research in biology, ecology, and political economy to see individuals within systems in a new way, interacting through relationships of power, history, mutualism, and care. Within those networks, the process of birth and death and regeneration constitute the cycles of life on Earth. A system approaching a steady state, or a type of homeostasis, is a highly interconnected network in which positive and negative feedback balance and benefit the whole structure. Such a system is stable and resilient to disturbance when the distribution of energy and resources is even and when care of the whole network is prioritized. Colonial capitalism suppresses the equitable distribution of resources, expecting great energy through the extraction, border construction, and incarceration and creation of supremacist cosmologies and institutions, to maintain a structure that prioritizes individuals over communities. Without the networking capacity of benefit of communities, society under colonial capitalism is more vulnerable to the shocks and failures of systems within systems, which we see with pandemics, raging wildfires, and stock market volatility. At this historic moment, when the web of life is in unprecedented peril. At this historic moment, when the web of life is in unprecedented peril, engagement with systems thinking is critical, allowing us to locate medicine, health, and care in new ways. Our diagnostic journey has shown how disease is situated in the spaces around the body, in the exposome, and in the cumulative history of relationships lived through our bodies and minds. We are complex holobionts with emergent properties that can't be predicted by looking discretely at the parts. There's no greater demonstration of this complexity. Hold on. I want to highlight that sentence because that is a great sentence. There's no greater demonstration of this complexity and relationality than in the emergent behavior of consciousness in our nervous system. Consciousness, understood as an emergent systemic property that confers a remarkable social intelligence and empathy for others, is the opposite of Descartes' dualism. We exist in and are made by our connections to the world. Pando is and becomes Pando. I do think of uh, intelligence as being an emergent quality of the complexity of the nervous system. Um, I don't know that that's been proved, but the fact that there doesn't seem to be any single part of your brain where memories are formed and stored, and where is more specific than memories, where consciousness is formed and stored. Um, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's good to see you, Just Me Crystal. Much love. Well, cleaning instead of being frustrated seems like a really healthy use of energy. Um, you know, yeah. I I'm I get that. And I'm glad you found the way you did because that sounds like a good way to me. Um I I don't think I think in a grand sense, the emergent qualities aren't really supposed to exist. I am. Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. I hope you're doing well today, too. I hope the internet was the worst thing that happens to you today. I hope nothing bad happens. I'm not entirely sure that I think that, you're welcome, love, that I think that, in a grand sense, these weird emergent qualities are supposed to exist. I do think that, and by that I mean, sort of the emergent quality of consciousness, you know. Also the emergent quality of 0 point energy, of vacuum fluctuation, as well as the emergent quality of gravity. I think that these qualities, what we think of as immutable qualities, only exist because we're perceiving them in from a limited perspective. And because of that, I don't think that they're necessarily truly real. I'm beginning to think that anything that requires observation requires an observer, or we are stuck only in what reaches our understanding. Very true. Very, very true. But I do I think that the emergent qualities of consciousness, of time, of the arrow of time, essentially, you know, that these things are observable because we exist to observe them. I think, in some ways, I think Descartes is right. I think, therefore, I am. I think it's more of the thought exists, so the thought exists because it's observed to exist. Yeah. Like, we only see vacuum energy, by the way, which is the very basis of everything that is sort of like how our existence is. But we only see it because we only see that it exists in this form. It only exists in this form because we are passing through it in time in a limited set of spatial dimensions. You know, we're existing in 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension. And because that time dimension has an arrow because of the limitations of our perception, possibly because of the limitations of the fact that we are in the macro universe, all of our existence is built around the fluctuation of energy. And I think that is, that I feel like, so it's not that consciousness isn't real, and it's not that our universe isn't real. It's that our perspective is so limited that we can't understand what is real and what isn't. And I want to bring this into talking about artificial intelligence and talking about created consciousness. I don't think that by on purpose building an AI, we're going to find a consciousness. We are going to build tools capable of doing more and more and more that is similar to us. It won't be a specific subroutine. It won't be a specific bit of algorithm or a specific number of iterations or that's going to allow a consciousness to emerge. It's going to be the complexity of the system and the complexity of the processes the system is trying to engage with at one time. That's what's going to be where the true new consciousness emerges, in my opinion. I'm not saying we're not going to get to it. I'm not saying it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure we're going to get there. It's just going to require a more and more and more complex set of algorithms and set of, amount of computing power. And what I think is eventually going to be this thought just occurred to me. What may eventually be, let me hedge my bets here, the complex system that maps out the basis for the network that's going to show emergent consciousness is probably going to be blockchain interactions. It's probably going to be the blockchain databases that do it. But, that's just a thought. It's entirely possible that we never get there. And it's entirely possible that blockchain turns out to be absolutely useless. All right, so back to the reading. I think we're going to try and get through the Tree of Life and Yeah, I think we're going to get through the Tree of Life and see where we are. Yeah. The science of human biology has been overtaken by the insight that Let me try that again. The science of human biology has been overtaken by the insight that to understand how we function optimally and how we get sick, we must develop a more sophisticated understanding of systems level interactions. While the last century's frontiers of biology focused on the gene, this century is defined by its fascination with systems, from the gut microbiome to neural networks. Both these systems impact the biology of the mind, which is not located simply in the brain, but is a composite phenomenon that occurs throughout the body, an oscillating identity, fully embodied but not restricted to one site. The nervous system is the fastest system of communication in the body, facilitating the sending and receiving of electrical signals through a network of specialized nerve cells called neurons. Neurons can be bundled together with connective tissue and blood vessels to create nerves, which branch out from the brain and spinal cord, the central nervous system, like a tree, extending the thinnest twigs into every tissue in the body, the peripheral nervous system. While neurons do the bulk of the communication work in the nervous system, there are just as many support cells that protect, insulate, and nourish neurons called glial cells. The three main functions Three main functions of the nervous system include receiving sensory input from sensory receptors, like our eyes, integrating those signals into information by the brain, a tiger, then sending out signals to tell the muscles what to do in response to that integration. Run! I feel like the like our eyes should have been something like, oh crap, what do I see? Something. But I really do I like that way of putting it. Input from sensory receptors, like our eyes, integrating those signals, a tiger, and sending out signals of what to do in response. Run! But other functions are just as important, like integrating sensations of love into a sense of knowing where we belong and with whom. We experience the world by merging different sensory inputs. The nervous system brings together all the other systems. Do you feel like this is important? I feel like this is extra important. It is the conductor of the body's orchestra, one that doesn't dominate but unifies the different voices, sets the tempo, listens critically, and shapes the interpretation of the music, keeping all the parts moving together as an integrated whole. From the instruments of this orchestra emerges the experience of consciousness. Although no individual neuron is capable of consciousness, the network of neurons throughout our body is a system sufficiently complex for new properties to emerge. Consciousness isn't merely an epiphenomenon. Epiphenomenon? Consciousness isn't merely an epiphenomenon of our brains. It confers an evolutionary advantage in helping us predict the world around us, and in particular to anticipate, understand, and learn from other people. A very good point, though. I want to have an epiphenomenon. Actually, it sounds painful. The shape of a neuron matters to its function. Let's try that again. The shape of a neuron matters to its function. Its small finger-like projections called dendrites receive multiple signals, sometimes at the same moment. These signals travel to the cell body where they are summed up into one singular signal and then sent down the axon. When the signal reaches the terminus, it changes from an electrical impulse to a chemical one through the release of neurotransmitters, such as dopamine or serotonin, into the space between connecting neurons called the synapse. From a system's perspective, a neuron is an information node with many inputs and only one output. A neural network is made up of interconnected neurons, taking in signals from both the world and from our bodies, correlating them with outgoing signals. Over time, the network receives more inputs and sends output signals based on prior learning. This is how we accumulate knowledge based on experience. Learning. Heuristics. Learning is how we non-genetically transmit information that is vital for our survival. And language is a critical aspect of cultural learning and transmission. Language development occurs simultaneously with brain network development. So it's not surprising that childhood is the time when the greatest learning happens. There appears to be a critical window in development beyond which language learning is far less successful. But all hope is not lost for adults. Learning a second language in adulthood, although difficult, can be done and is accompanied by an increase in brain size to handle the new information. The growth proportional to how well you pick up the language and how much effort you put into learning it. The networks that are laid out, used, and reinforced through language levels of order than the sum of its individual neurons. Not slick, man. Let's see why that's important now. When neurological systems are working well, you're able to engage in a fluent conversation, to read, to name and recall, to ponder and imagine and explore and analyze. Colonial capitalism puts pressure on the system, straining these cognitive capacities, particularly in people who are denied the means for survival. Poverty is a cognitive burden. Working in poverty so that you and your family may eat every day takes a neurological toll. Poverty is associated with lower attention and lower working memory capacity. Rallying talk from the wealthy to pull oneself up by one's bootstraps rings particularly hollow when one's mental faculties are consumed by the demands of survival. Worse yet, the experience of surviving within the systems of exploitation within colonial capitalism has been individualized. Government policy and medicine are often blind to the ways the nervous system is connected to the world. You are encouraged to develop resilience, a personal habit of being robust to the shocks of a system that you cannot change. Sort of a why are we treating PSD, not prevent PTSD, and not preventing it? Um, I mean, we've discussed in other places, and I think in other places in this book, how poverty is a cognitive burden. How it's how destructive a force it is. Um, but I do feel like it's constant. It needs to constantly be restated that this is, this is one of the burdens that we're putting on people. Because poverty, like hunger, like lack of housing, like all of its constituent parts, is something that we can actively do something about. Um, it's something that is, you know, it's something that exists because we allow it to continue to exist. Uh, if there were an equitable distribution of resources, poverty, hunger, housing wouldn't exist. Um, it wouldn't be, we are as a as a race, humanity, All humans. You know, we are past the point of actually needing to endure hardship. All of the problems we are having today, minus earthquakes, but even that I'm willing to bet we're doing to ourselves. All of the problems we're having today, we're doing to ourselves. And the thing is, like, earthquakes, we have the ability to design around them. You know, we have the ability to design around tsunamis. We have the ability to design around hurricanes. These natural disasters, and the thing is, we're making the tsunamis and hurricanes worse on ourselves. We're making a lot of these natural disasters way, way worse on ourselves. We have the ability to mediate and ameliorate a lot of the damage done by these natural disasters. All of the ecological disasters that are impending are ones we're doing to ourselves. Problems like hunger, poverty, lack of housing, lack of electricity, lack of water, lack of healthcare. These are all things that humans are doing to humans. And if we knock all that crap off, you know, all of a sudden we'll be in a much better place to take care of the final few steps that we need to take care of before it's like, okay, we're no longer, our existence is no longer threatenable. You know? And obviously one of the things that threatens our species the most, threatens our race the most, is climate change, is what we are doing, the global destruction of climate change and what we're doing to the climate. And I shouldn't need to explicitly tie that into colonial capitalism for people to get how colonial capitalism has led to where we are with climate change. It should be obvious to people that because colonial capitalism is so extractive, it's obviously extracting everything out of the environment and not putting anything back. There's no balance there. It's simply extractive, not interactive. That is, you know, that's really what's going to destroy us. I mean, unless we all go, unless we go into nuclear oblivion. Like, that is the other thing, that the other way in which we really do threaten our own existence. You know, is nuclear, is all-out nuclear war. And I do feel like we may or may not be inching closer to that, you know. Although it's been a while since North Korea or Russia has threatened with a nuke. But we are very much threatening our own ability to survive with what we are doing to the planet around us. And that's, well, that's a lot of what this book is talking about. And again, if we changed our behaviors, if we changed our perspectives, if we changed languages, that may be avoidable. It sure would be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be nice if we could make those shifts. We'll see. Here in Virginia, we are quickly coming up to the off-year gubernatorial election, as well as, I think, some congressional... a few districts have a congressional representative. I don't know. And as we get closer to election time, we'll talk a bit about that on our main show on Saturday evenings, posted mostly. But for right now, I want to point out, when it comes election time, keep in mind these ideas about that we are highly interconnected, not just as a species, but as a part of the biosphere, as the great biosphere, and that, keep in mind what has threatened that. Yeah. Now, again, here we're here at the end, towards the end of the stream. I'm gonna give another call to action. If you notice, we are doing a charity stream for National Public Radio today, and we have been and will be for, I think, until after the weekend. I think until next week we will be continuing to do a charity stream. Here, let's switch over to that. And we will be for NPR, National Public Radio. It is my local NPR station's fund drive, Radio IQ, and their fall fund drive. And as a result, I thought it would be a good time to run a charity stream, other than our normal Sunday charity streams for them, because we're using their content. I'm not going to say we stealing content, but we sure are borrowing it heavy. So, yeah, we are also doing this. Well, part of why they have had to step up their fundraising actions from No, I don't think they do either, especially because I warned them I was gonna, and they said, well, warned. I asked them if I could, and they said, we can't endorse it. We're not allowed to tell you to do it. And we don't know what our legal department's gonna say. But give it a try. We're pretty interested. And I was like, okay, that's that's as close to a yes as I'm gonna get. If I was gonna get a no, I'd have got a no. So, as long as they don't tell me not to, they may at some point come to me asking for more money, and I will feel highly obliged to give it to them. But until that point, but we're doing a fundraiser here for NPR as well for this week. Now, I think this is gonna be something we start doing in general. When our local station does fundraiser, we'll do a fundraiser. Because the federal government has cut all spending for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which includes PBS and NPR. And I believe in the importance of local NPR stations and what they bring to a community. I believe that they are incredibly important to the continued functioning of media services. I believe that for the local community, they bring both investigative reporting that holds local power structures accountable, as they do nationally. Let me not just blaze past the fact that they do that nationally too, but locally it's even more important. Also, they provide local emergency alerts and local emergency information that a large portion of the nation has no other access to that emergency information. Which means, that without their local stations, a lot of these people are going to be left in a very dangerous position in the event of a natural disaster. One that happens randomly or one that we make worse. Just saying. So supporting not only your local station, but NPR in general, helps maintain journalistic integrity and a national emergency alert system that would be that could cost thousands, if not more, of lives if not maintained. And the thing is, it's the local stations that are going to start suffering without this national federal funding. A lot of that funding was going from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting through PBS and NPR to the local affiliate stations, which is why it's more important now that you donate to your local station. 1-800-985-8900 is the number for my local station. I believe. I'm fairly certain that's the right one. I've been hearing it my whole life, and yet I keep forgetting it. So this is a call to action to donate to NPR in one way or another. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Just Me Crystal, for being here in the chat. Much love. Much love to all the lurkers out there in the chat. Thank you for being here. And now is the time on the show when I say, as they say around here, stick around for the raid. Ha ha ha. But also, as they say around here, 2 up, 2 down, VA, double deuces. I'm out, y'all.
Material relating to her that you thought might eventually come out and cast doubt. And so I want to read a paragraph from your book. You write, a development still unknown to the American public to this day. At that time, we were alerted to some materials that had come into the possession of the U.S. government. They came from a classified source. The source and content of that material remains classified as I write this. Had it become public, the unverified material would undoubtedly have been used by political opponents to cast serious doubt on the Attorney General's independence in connection with the Clinton investigation. So this was kind of surprising to me because you're casting doubt on Loretta Lynch through a classified document that you can't reveal. So is that being fair to her to cast doubt on her without saying what the alleged infraction was?
Yeah, no, I get that question. I hope so, given the way I've written it. I tried very hard in at least 2 places in the book to explain that I don't believe Loretta Lynch acted improperly in overseeing this investigation. I saw no indication that she was shaping it, steering it, or in cahoots with the Clinton campaign. And I try to explain that. But even though I never saw that, there was material, and I get the frustration, but I'm limited by what the FBI will let me say, given the classification. There was material that would allow that to be doubted and a corrosive concern about whether the investigation actually was independent to creep in.
There is speculation in the press that the classified document that you're talking about is an email that had said that Loretta Lynch had promised to go easy on Hillary Clinton in the email investigation. And there's also speculation that that email in question was a fake. It was released during the time of the hack of the DNC and John Podesta, who was the head of the Hillary campaign. Can you say anything to clarify this?
Not much, Terry. I guess I can say this. The underlying material was genuine. Whether its content was true or not is a different question. And we never found any indication, as I said, that Loretta acted improperly. And so it's much more about perception than about any actual concern that Loretta was acting improperly.
When you were deliberating with the FBI leadership about if and how to announce your findings to the public about the Hillary email investigation and her use of a private server, you write, I didn't want the Department of Justice to know what we were doing. The most aggressive step to demonstrate the independence of our investigation would be for the FBI to announce something without involving the Justice Department at all. They might well direct me not